Here is the book I'm going to present. As you can see, can you see it? Yeah. Okay. It's been advertised on your screen under slightly false pretenses. It seems like it makes it seem like I'm the main author and the other two are a sort of collaborator with me. But in fact, of the three authors, I've done the least amount of work on this volume. My two other co-authors have done much more than I have done. Secondly, I hope you will join me in sending best regards to the first author, Emmanuel Farjoun, who is now recovering from a recent heart attack. I send him best wishes. He's recovering well, but let's all join in sending him best regards. Now, this book doesn't assume that the reader is familiar with traditional Marxian political economy. You don't need to have read Capital or any of the sort of short courses based on this Capital, although it wouldn't hurt if you have that. But of course, many of you will have read Das Capital or some other book presenting traditional Marxian political economy. To those of you, what I will say will sound somehow familiar, but also somehow offbeat. This is because the work I'm presenting can be described as unorthodox Marxian political economy. It's not orthodox. In what sense do I mean it's not orthodox? Well, the following three things. We do not assume and we do not accept that Marx was always right. He was wrong on some things, including things on political economy. Secondly, even where he was right, and in my humble opinion, many, if not most things he was right on, his argument for making this or that statement may not be correct or not the best argument leading to this conclusion. And thirdly, that using different methodology than traditional Marxist economy may lead to more powerful additional results, which you cannot derive by the traditional methodology. I think that Das Capital can be compared to a book that appeared more or less at about the same time, and that's The Origin of Species. Nobody who is interested in evolution, and in fact, nobody who wants to be properly educated can do without reading The Origin of Species. But we don't teach evolution theory from The Origin of Species. It is things have progressed beyond it. It is a book written in sort of second half of the 19th century. We are living 2 centuries ahead. And the same, I think, applies to Das Capital. I think everybody should read it, especially the first volume, but also some parts of the others. But I think it is wrong to think that this is the last word in this tradition of political economy. Okay, now I want to state the problem that we address, and this is an important but a restricted problem that we address in this book. It is finding a bridge between 2 levels or 2 spheres of the capitalist economic system. we can regard it as consisting or comprising two levels or two spheres. At the deeper level, there is what Marx actually referred to as the hidden abode of production. This is the sphere of production and consumption where the basic metabolism of the economic system takes place. Things are produced and then consumed. Some of them are consumed as inputs for further production. Some of them end up by being consumed by consumers and leave the productive sphere. Now, this level, this sphere exists in all economic systems. It's not just under capitalism that it exists. In every human society, in every economic system that has existed or that can exist, this sphere is there. The basic productive and consumption metabolism of the society. At this level, goods and services appear as products. Now, consistently, I will refer to products as comprising both goods, physical goods, abstract goods, as well as services. These are all products. What products share is that they all have as direct or indirect input human labor. Human labor is a direct and or indirect input of all products. Now, in fact, each product has three kinds of input. It has input as labor input. Labor is expended in, or may be expended in producing it directly. It has previously produced products as inputs, and it has gifts of nature. Let me give you a simple example. A farmer grows wheat. Now, the inputs for the production of wheat include, first of all, labor. Secondly, previously produced products, seeds, fuel for the machinery that is used, etc., and gifts of nature. You cannot grow wheat without some sunshine, rain, etc. These are gifts of nature. But in fact, if you take the previously produced inputs and resolve them again into their own inputs and proceed in this way, then you end up with two kinds of ultimate inputs. Ultimately, if you pursue the analysis of direct inputs further and further back, you end up just with labor and gifts of nature. And the obvious and natural way to measure products, a common measure that naturally applies to all products, is the amount of direct and indirect labor that is used in them. They embody a certain amount of direct and indirect labor in their production. So we call this amount the labor content of a given product. The labor content of a given product is the amount, the total amount measured in worker hours, how many worker hours are embodied in the given product. Now, those of you who are familiar with Marxian economy will see immediately that what I'm talking about is what Marx calls, value. Well, our definition of labor content differs in some respects from Marx's definition of value, but these differences are minor and do not affect my present discussion. Nevertheless, I avoid using the term value for two reasons. First of all, it begs certain questions that I want to avoid. The term value itself is loaded. Secondly, it is liable to be confused with other uses of the term labor, especially a term that I will have to use later on, which will be very important in the discussion, and that is value added. Those of us who live in countries where you pay tax on value added are familiar with this. Value added tax is levied on a certain amount of a certain sum of money, which is quite different from the meaning of value in Marx. So I will continue to use labor content, but if you wish to think of labor content as more or less the same thing as Marx's value, then please go ahead. I'm not going to quarrel with this. So this is one level of the economy, which, as I said, exists in all economic systems. However, in many economic systems, there is a further level which mediates processes that take place at the level of production. And by this, I mean the level of the market. For example, a product that is used either as an input for further production or for ultimate consumption doesn't go direct from the producer to the location where it is used or consumed, but is mediated by process, by a transaction that is called purchase, sale and purchase. For example, electricity that is produced by the electricity generating facility is sold by the producer and is bought by other firms that produce further products and use electricity, and also is, as we know now very clearly, is also has to be bought by the ultimate consumer. We don't get directly electricity from the electric producing facility, but it has to go through a transaction of sale and purchase. Now, at this level, under capitalism, this level of the market assumes an enormous size and importance, to the extent that the direct producers, the people who actually do the work, have to purchase their means of subsistence and all the products that they use. And the firms that produce, that manufacture the various products have to buy labor power at on the market. So everything is bought and sold. So this level is the level of commodities. Here at this level, goods and services appear as commodities, which are bought and sold. Obviously, the common measure of commodities is their price. Now, price is measured in various currencies: dollars, pounds, euros, yens, whatever. Whereas price is something overt, there are of course few secret transactions where we don't know what price was paid for a given commodity. But on the whole, it is an obvious measure of commodities. You go to the supermarket, the price of each item is displayed. It's something quite patent. On the other hand, if you start to think of it, the labor content of a product is not at all obvious. It is not something that is stuck as a label on the given product. It's something that involves quite complicated computation. I mean, if you start to think about it, because you need to take into consideration not only the direct labor input that goes into the given product, but also the indirect, and the indirect goes back several stages back. Then, in fact, in order to find out the labor content of a given product, you need to go through an enormously complicated computation. And this gives, if you like, a further justification to what the description of Marx that Marx gave to this level as the hidden abode of production. It is hidden also in the sense that the natural common measure of products, namely their labor content, is not at all obvious, but involves quite a lot of computation. And in fact, very few of us are in a position to figure out the labor content of a given product. Okay. So going back to stating the basic problem that we address in this book is, how do we build a bridge between these two levels? We need a bridge between the level of production and the level of the market for two-way traffic. On the one hand, we need the phenomena to explain the phenomena of the market in terms of what goes on in the sphere of production. Obviously, the level of the market is not autonomous. What goes on, the various movements and the various phenomena that occur in it are, in the end, driven by what occurs in the level of production. How do we explain the movements of prices, etc., in terms of labor content and in terms of other phenomena of the level of production? That is one direction for which we need the bridge, but also we need the bridge between these two levels in order to use the freely available data from the market, that is to say prices which are openly displayed, and various quantities that use prices, like value added, which I will explain in a moment. I will give you the rough definition of value added, which is a price quantity, gross national product, etc., various productivity of labor in the sense that official statistics define it. How do we use these data which are available in order to figure out what is going on on the hidden domain of production? So we need a bridge between these two levels. We need, in particular, a bridge between the quantities of labor content and price. Now here we part company with the way Marx addresses this. You may ask, can we use information about L content of a given product to figure out its price? That's I went to the supermarket, I bought a kilogram of sugar for a given price. Can you explain this price in terms of the labor content of this product? We don't think you can, and neither does Marx in the end. But can we use information about the labor content of all products, not only the sugar, everything that goes into the sugar? Can we use the full information, if we had such a thing, about labor contents in order to determine the price of a particular commodity, which is bought and sold in a given transaction on the market? We think that it is misguided to look for such determination. We do not think that you can determine individual prices by information about labor contents. Individual prices, I mean the price of a given commodity or a given type of commodity at a given time. Moreover, this is not only impossible, but also unnecessary, because political economy is a macro discipline. It is not really concerned, it's not really important for us to know, to be able to determine the price of a particular individual commodity. Okay, but that doesn't mean that there is no connection. Our methodology is based on a statistical view of the connection between prices and labor content. Let us consider the totality of transactions of sale and purchase of commodity products during a given period, say during a month, in a big economic domain. For example, the United States, the EU, China, or for that matter, the whole world. We cannot use full data, even if we had them, about L content in order to determine individual prices. But we can look at the statistical connection. And it turns out that this statistical connection is extremely important and also extremely fertile in terms of the results that it can allow us to deduce. Here, I want to go to share with you my screen. Okay, now, this graph represents schematically the following quantity. For each transaction in, let us say, in a given month, in a given economic domain, we plot the ratio between the price of the commodity product that has been bought and sold and its labor content. So what you can see here is that this ratio is not constant. It differs from transaction to transaction. On this graph, which is more or less realistic for the United States a year or two ago, you can see that the bulk of transactions have a price rate. That is to say, the ratio between price and labor content of the item that is being bought and sold. Between, in this domain, between 25 to 75 in terms of dollars per worker hour. The units in which this ratio is measured is price let us say dollars per worker hour. Worker hour is the common measure of labor content. The labor content of a given product is the amount of worker hours used directly and indirectly to produce it. Here we have the ratio between the price and the labor content of a given, in a given transaction of buying and selling of a commodity product. And as you can see, the distribution is rather tight. In other words, there is quite a close correlation between labor content and price. There is no one-to-one correspondence, there is no equality, but there is a rather tight spread of this kind of thing. Okay. All right. Now, where was it? Okay. The thing is that here we can use a very powerful result from statistics. Although the ratio, which I call price rate of a given transaction, is variable all over the place, what happens if you take a rather big sample of such transactions? Let us take a sample basket of a diverse commodity products of a larger big size. You can think of the kind of collection of items that is used in order to calculate the price index, retail price index. It is the statisticians take a rather big collection of items of diverse kinds and use it to calculate the rate of inflation. The rate of price rise is different for each item, but they use a big basket of items in order to calculate the sort of the average. This is because this is possible because the law of large numbers of statistics tells us that if you take a large basket, and I will refer now repeatedly to basket, by which I mean a large collection of diverse commodity products. A representative sample. If you take a representative sample of commodity products and you calculate its specific price, that is to say the ratio between the total price of the items in the basket divided by the number of worker hours required to produce the totality of these items, then this ratio is with a very high probability, very, very near to the average of the distribution. Let me go back to where is the share? Share screen again. Okay, let me go back. So you see here, this is the distribution of the ratio price per worker hour for individual commodities. But if you take a large basket, first of all, take eight items, well, it's quite far from the average of the distribution. For 80 items, 800 items, 8,000 items, 80,000 items, it turns out that the price rate for this whole basket is very near to the average of the distribution, which was at 60. I'll show you. The average of the whole distribution is not the highest point of the curve, it is somewhere here, 60. These are realistic numbers for the United States in recent years, or last year or the year before. Now, we have a remarkable result. We are able to prove, I will not take you through the technicalities of the proof, but you can find it in the book, that for a large basket, a large sample of commodity products, the price rate is very near the average of the distribution, which turns out to be equal to the average wage rate in the economy divided by the wage share. Now I have to explain what I mean by wage share. Okay. What does stop share? Okay. In order to explain what the share of wages in the economy is, I have to remind you or tell you, if you haven't heard it before, what is meant by value added. The value added, for example, of a firm in a given period, let's say in a given month or a given year, is a sum of money equal to the total prices that the firm gets by selling its products. So the total price sale of its products minus the total cost of its non-labor inputs. Okay? So when you pay value-added tax, you commission a contractor to do some building works for you. This is a common experience of many of us. We have the contractor employs a certain number of workers. Now, what you pay value-added tax on is the value added of the work done, which is the total sale price of the contractor, the total net money that you pay him, minus the cost of non-labor inputs, materials, paints, bricks, etc., etc. This is the value added. You can compute it, and there are statistics about it, not for individual firms, but for whole economy, for whole sectors of the economy, and for the whole economy. This is called the value added in a given economy. Now, by wage share, we mean the total, the share, the relative share of the wages in this value added, because from the value added, part of it is paid as wages for the workers employed in production. The remaining part is taken as profit for the employer, for banks, etc., etc., etc. The workers don't get it. Now, the wage share in the large economic sphere is around 50%, half. And remarkably, it has been more or less around half since many, many decades. In fact, in all the most of the examples that Marx gives in Das Kapital for these calculations, it turned out if you use the definition of wage share that I gave you, it turns out that the wage share that he assumes is 1/2. Okay. Okay. Let's get back to the Okay. Now, the wonderful thing about it is that the average wage rate as well as the wage share are available in national statistics. This is something that is not hidden. It is not like labor content that is very hidden and not at all available in statistics. There are very few statistical studies that tell you about the labor content of products. But both the average wage rate and the wage share are available in national statistics. This is fantastic because it enables us to convert from prices to labor content, not for individual products, but for baskets. Let's see how this is done. Okay. As you can see, these are fairly realistic numbers. In the US economy, not now, but a year or two ago, the average hourly rate was $30 per hour. By the way, the average is not the same as the median. It doesn't mean that most workers got this pay. In fact, the majority of workers got much less than, or considerably less than $30 per hour. Because the median, the wage rate of the median of the distribution is considerably less than $30. The average is not the same as the median. The median is the wage rate that is given to this or less than it is made by 50% of the working hours. So anyway, but the average was about $30. The wage share was around 50%. So you, in order to figure out the specific price or the price rate of a basket of commodities, a large basket of commodity products, we have to divide 30 by 1/2. 30 divided by 1/2 is 60. So the answer is $60 per working hour, for worker hour. Or if you like, $1 bought you 1 minute of worker hour, worker labor, 1 minute of working time. Not for individual products. It doesn't work if you try to apply to individual product. I mean, this can be more or it can be less. But for a sample, a large sample of commodity products, the rate, the price rate is about $1 per worker's minute. Okay. So what we have here is not only a connection between labor content and price. Of course, labor content and price, not of individual products, but of baskets. But we have also a way of converting one to the other in quantitative terms. That is to say, we have, if you like, what is known as the coefficient of proportionality. The two are not only proportional, not for individual products, but for baskets. Price is proportional to labor content. It is not only proportional, but we have also a way of converting from one to the other. And this is so, for example, take the sum of $1,000. $1,000 was the median weekly wage of workers in the United States a year or two ago. Okay, so you on the average, not on the median worker was paid $1,000 for a 40-hour week. What can the what is the labor content that can be purchased for this sum of money, for this wage? Well, using the formula that I just presented, the answer is 1,000 divided by 30 multiplied by 1/2, which is approximately 16.7 worker hours. That is to say, the median worker who works for a whole week of 40 hours gets money that enables him or her to purchase a basket of products whose labor content is 16.7 worker hours. What happens to the rest? The rest is appropriated by capital. Okay. This is an example of a very useful way of looking at wages. We all know that there is a difference between nominal wages and real wages. Nominal wages is just the sum of money that you get at a given time for the work you do. There's the nominal wage rate. Nominal wage rate, of course, means very little because of inflation. So there is something called the real wage. The real wage rate is the wage rate calculated in order to take inflation into consideration. The real wages remain constant if they enable you to buy the same basket of consumer goods. Okay, so if your wages keep pace with inflation, and you get a constant real wage, that means that you can purchase the same basket of commodities from one year to the next. But hold on, in the meantime, labor productivity has increased, and I'll come back to this. Is a very important parameter in the capitalist economy, the increase of labor productivity. So the same basket of commodities that took a given amount of labor to produce in 2010 may now require much less labor time to produce because labor productivity has increased. So while if your real wages remain constant, if you keep pace with inflation, you are able to buy the same basket of consumer products, you are actually paid a smaller share of the labor you have invested in the economy. Is this clear? In fact, by keeping real wages fixed, by keeping pace with inflation, you actually get exploited more and more. In order to keep your rate of exploitation at 50%, you need to be compensated over and above the rate of inflation. You need to take into account the productivity, the rising productivity of labor, and this plays a very. I'll get rid of this. Stop. This plays a very important part in the book I'm talking about. it is useful to measure wages not in nominal terms, not even in real terms, according to the usual statistics, but in terms of its L content. In other words, it is vital, in order to understand what is going on, it is vital to convert the money wages into the L content that this money wage is able to purchase. Again, we are talking not about individual products, but about baskets. This is what we call L wage. The L wage of a given work contract is the money wage translated into terms of L content, of labor content. And the formula for translating it is the one I've given you. The ratio between price and labor content is given by the simple formula that we have. In other words, we have a way of translating from one to the other. Let me do a share screen again. And okay. Okay, now this gives you the L wage rate. The L wage rate is how many, how much labor content you are able to purchase for a given hour of work that you do for your employer. Okay. Now the average, as we know, is 50%. That is to say, the average worker, as it were, is able to purchase for. I mean, if he or she keeps pace with the productivity of labor, is at an average wage share of 50%. The average worker is able to purchase commodity products that, or a basket that has taken half an hour to produce. All right. But this is the average work. In the United States, in the period I was talking about, and this is taken, the source for this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics 2021. Workers on the minimum wage were able to purchase for doing 1 hour's work 0.12 of an hour's worth of labor content. Okay. Fast food workers got 0.20, 1/5, right? 1/5 of, let's to say 12 minutes. 12 minutes work. The workers were working for 1 hour, and for the wage they got, they were able to purchase 12 minutes worth of labor content. A registered nurse was doing quite a lot better. Registered nurses were paid 0.62 of a worker's hour. For doing 1 hour's work, the registered nurse was able to purchase 0.62 hours of labor content. A chief executive, look at it, got more than one. That is to say, a chief executive for 1 hour's employment was able to purchase more than 1 hour's worth of labor content. We have, in other words, a whole distribution of labor or what we call L wages, wages measured not in money, and not in inflation adjusted money, but in labor time, in labor content. You are able to see both the pay and the inequality of distribution of L wage. Here is a realistic graph of L wages. You see at the horizontal axis, you see the L wage rate. The X here shows you, just a moment. Yeah, the X here indicates the average. Okay, so but the red area indicates the median. Here is the median is less than the average, and this means that about half of the workforce was paid less than the average wage rate. Okay. These numbers are in terms of not of money, but the numbers on the vertical axis are measured in worker hours. You see the light blue area here consists of privileged workers who actually get per hour of work wages that enable them to purchase more than an hour's worth of products. Of course, not individual, it's always a question of whole baskets of commodity products. Okay. Now, let me stop wage share again. Now, I'm nearly through, but I want to address one more important point. From what I've said so far, you will see that it is very important to measure the increase of labor productivity. Okay? Because for the working class, it's important that their wages, I mean, in order to actually stay in one place, in order not to be exploited more from one year to the next, it is important to keep pace not with the price, not only with inflation, but with the rise of their own productivity. If they don't keep pace with their own productivity, then they get exploited more from year to year. How do we measure the increase of productivity? Now, in labor content terms, the productivity is measured in the amount of hours of work that is needed directly or indirectly in order to produce a given product or a given basket of products. This it cannot be observed directly, because I mean you have to take into consideration not only the direct labor that is used for a given basket, but also the indirect labor. And this involves a hellishly complicated computation that is not feasible actually to do with any accuracy. By the way, the calculation is quite similar to that used for nowadays for calculating carbon imprint. It is also a calculation that takes into consideration not only the amount of carbon directly burned in a given process, but also the carbon imprint of the inputs. Okay, this is terribly complicated, and you don't get accurate numbers in this way. But we can estimate the change of productivity in material terms by looking at the standard definition of labor productivity, which apparently is something completely different. the standard, if you look at the national statistics of any given country or for the global economy, the labor productivity is measured in the value added, which I defined earlier, the value added obtained or done in a given period of time, divided by the number of worker hours. Okay, so it's a sum of money, which is the value added of the economy or of the given sector or of a given firm, if you like. It depends what you're measuring, divided by the number of worker hours expended in order to produce this value added. Okay, so it's a sum of money per worker hour. Apparently, these are two completely different measures. I mean, the material measure of productivity that I defined earlier, and this standard measure, which is obtained by statistics, is quite another. But we are able to prove that to a high degree of approximation, the rate of change of the material productivity is very nearly the same. So very great probability is very nearly the same as the rate of change of the standard measure of productivity. So although these two measures are quite different, for a large economy, for the world economy, for the United States, for the EU, et cetera, the rate of change is very, very close together. So here you see our additional results that we are able to obtain by using our statistical methodology. I think I've spoken enough.